I'm sorry, but I forgot one of my papers. Just be back in a minute. Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Iva Halilaj will defend the academic thesis leveraging patient decision aids and decision support systems towards more personalized medical treatments. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Dear Director, dear Corona members, dear family, friends and colleagues, today I'll present to you a summary of my thesis titled Leveraging Patient Decision Aids and Decision Support Systems Towards More Personalized Medical Treatments. I'll start with a simple example, and I want you to meet John Smith, who is a Dutch cyclist, and he has a very active lifestyle. He also takes care of his dog, and he goes cycling a lot. However, he does have a persistent knee pain, which seems not to go away. When he goes to the doctor suggests him to do surgery as the best treatment option in this case. However, John is really anxious about it because surgery would mean that he would have to spend time in the hospital for quite some days, and nobody can take care of his dog. Now, how about if the doctor would ask John, what's important to you? And they would go and discuss treatment alternatives, such as physiotherapy, which brings similar results. And after discussing together, the treatment therapy is the one that they go for, and John is back to his active life and also going on long walks with his dog. This is a very simple example of showing that this is shared decision-making in healthcare, which is a collaborative process in between a clinician and a patient for informed treatment decisions. This also combines the clinician's expertise with what's more important to the patients, which we call patients' values and preferences. This also applies to the field of oncology, which is a branch of medicine that deals with the study, treatment, diagnosis, and prevention of cancer. When a patient is diagnosed with cancer, there are multiple treatment options available. However, shared decision-making in this case becomes more complicated. This process is still crucial since all the treatment options have different side effects and they have different impacts on a daily life. This process is getting even more relevant lately in oncology since there are a lot of transformations driven by demographic changes and also technological advances. And more people are getting cancer and dying from it. And next to that, there are a lot of new therapies expanding treatment options and making this process even more complex. This process is also very challenging when it comes to the clinical practice, since there is a lack of familiarity with this concept from doctor's perspective, but also from patient's perspective. There is a lack of training of the doctors, and also when it comes to cancer, treatments are always complex, and there are multiple treatment options. Also, patient knowledge is quite limited, and there is always little time to discuss all treatment options in a clinical setting. But we do have tools that facilitate this process, and one of them, these are called patient decision aids, and these are tools developed to help patients. And on the other side, we have tools that help doctors, which are called decision support systems, which is also the focus of my thesis. Right now, I'll focus in the first part on the patient decision aids. We call them PDAs, which are tools that are designed to help patients make informed decisions about treatment options. They do provide evidence-based information about treatments, benefits, and the risks. They do facilitate shared decision-making process between patients and clinicians. However, they are not meant to replace the clinician the clinical judgmental. There are a lot of benefits if you use PDAs, starting by the increase of patient awareness about risk perception. Also, sometimes they could lead to less invasive treatments, and they could lead also to less decisional conflict. Overall, they lead to more satisfaction about treatment options, and at the same time, the patients who undergo who use these tools seem to have less anxiety when they go through the treatments. So the first study of my thesis was focusing in developing a PDA for lung cancer patients that would help patients understand better the treatment options. Why are we doing this? So there are recent studies that have shown that majority of lung cancer patients find it really important to be involved in treatment shared decision making. However, from these studies was shown that a lot of these respondents experienced decisional conflict and they felt uninformed. So there is a clear unmet clinical need to inform the patients about treatment and treatment option and helping them understand what's most important for them. About lung cancer, when a patient is diagnosed with lung cancer, there are multiple treatment options. Mainly surgery and radiation therapy are the ones that we are focused in this PDA. Sometimes they could also undergo chemotherapy after surgery. So the purpose of this study was to develop this PDA, this tool that would inform patients and that would empower them and help to decide between radiotherapy and surgery. We tested this proof of concept PDA in a group of patients, clinicians, computer scientists. We did hypothesize that this would increase patients' knowledge about treatment options, and this would help, so if they would use this tool, this would help patient and the clinician to make an informed treatment choice together. When we develop these tools, we have multiple types of multiple formats, starting from non-interactive ones, which are paper-based and video-based. And we also have interactive ones, which are web-based and mobile-based. In this presentation, I'll focus to the web-based, since that's what we developed. This is an example, like a user interface of what we developed for lung cancer patients, where patients could choose between stereotactic radiotherapy and surgery. And here you can see that they could get information about how the treatment works, how long does it last, what are the potential side effects, long-term complications, etc. After they receive all the information, they can fill in a quiz with questions in order to see if they understood what the information was about. Next to that, they can insert their own values and preferences. So for instance, if having to stay to the hospital for a couple of days and undergoing a surgery would be a minor, major, or not a problem at all for them, they could input this one. And all these inputs from the patients, we do save them in a PDF format that they could print it before they go to the consultation. We are aware that patients are not very familiar with all the medical terms. Therefore, we have included a simplified dictionary for terms that could be too complex for the patients. How we tested this app? We did use two approaches. So we did qualitative approach. We did interview formally treated patients. So they had undergone either surgery or radiotherapy, and we asked questions about their past experiences. And on the other side, we did test our app as if they were to use this app, and we used a questionnaire to ask different patients, clinicians, and computer scientists about the usability of this tool and how did they find it. We did recruit patients from different hospitals in the Netherlands. And from the qualitative part of the results, we noticed that from their past experiences, more than 60% of patients didn't feel engaged in the decision-making. They also found out that there was a lack of information about treatment alternatives. There were also missing details about long-term complications, such as they didn't expect to have so much pain after the treatment. And there were also some missing anatomical information related to surgery. In total, so 62% of them started to develop a information-seeking behavior. So they started to look online about mortality rates, treatment options, hospital performance. And under 40% of them didn't do so since they felt like all their questions were answered, and some of them had some past negative experiences with online searching. From the second part, so from the testing of our app, we did use this questionnaire with 40 questions, and we did ask about usability of the app, user-friendliness of the app, information provided about treatment options, and contribution to shared decision-making if they were to use this app in a clinical setting. As you can see here from the results, we asked about the design and usability, and you can see from the colors, from the green color, that majority of the respondents thought that the app is easy to navigate and to use. When we asked them if the app asks too much time to finish, they disagreed. So as you can see in the second question, that they don't think that this app takes too much time to go through. And overall, they thought the app looks nice, nicely designed. When we asked questions if this would help them in the shared decision making, we got positive responses. So above 90% of them thought that this tool would help them find what's most important and in the treatment. And they also when we asked doctors if they would recommend this to their patients, they agreed with this statement. Next to that, we asked about treatment options, if information that was provided there was clear enough. And at the same time, we also had, some questions about if side effects that were listed in the app were clear for the patients to understand. I will go quickly back here because I wanted to mention this question. So we asked the question about if this app alone would give enough information so they could come up with a decision, and the patients agreed, but however, we saw that 4 out of 21 doctors didn't think so. We also got some critical feedback, so some feedback for improvement. So they recommended that we would use more multimedia components and use less text. As a summary of this first objective or this first study, we developed a PDA that for lung cancer patients. This PDA was seen as a valuable tool that would help patients engage in the shared decision-making or the treatment decision. The positive results from this testing show the potential of this PDA being used in a clinical practice. However, future studies should focus on implementing these tools in clinical setting. Now I'll go to the second part, decision support systems, which are computer-based systems that bring evidence-based recommendations for diagnosis and treatment. They are meant to be used from the doctors, and how do they work? They use clinical guidelines, patient data, AI models for personalized recommendations. They also enhance clinical decision-making by highlighting the risks, and also they present the available treatment options. As an objective two, we developed an app called AIforcancer.ai, where we did collect curated models from different types of cancer, such as prostate, lung cancer, brain cancer, head and neck, rectal cancer. And we developed this, we collected these apps, and we just simplified. So we simplified the user interface so the patients could, so the doctors could input some of the clinical parameters, and they could generate mortality rates or survival chances. One example is this lung model, where the doctor could insert from the input form age, gender, performance status, stage of cancer, and they could calculate survival chances of this patient. As a summary of this objective two, we did develop this open source. We call it Model Zoo for these predictive models for clinicians. And we also encourage other researchers to publish their models in this open source. And however, these tools require maintenance, and also future studies should focus also in trying to implement them into clinical setting. In conclusion, when it comes to making a treatment choice, when we use only national guidelines, we are talking about conventional shared decision-making. When we include patient decision aids, there is still an improvement, so we have a traditional shared decision-making. And when we use both patient decision aids and decision support systems, we do have a more individualized shared decision-making. And this was also, that's what we did. So we made one extra step towards more personalized treatment options. I want to thank you for your attention, and I give back the word to the prorector.
Thank you very much for your clear presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Dekker, Professor of Clinical Data Science at Maastricht University and Chair of the Assessment Committee.
Thank you, Madam Prorector. And dear candidate, congratulations on a lovely thesis. I really liked the applied aspect of it. You really went all the way to writing real software and trying to put it in front of patients and see what they thought, which is where not many students go. So that's certainly commendable. So congratulations for your supervisory team and your friends and family who supported you through this journey. As you are coming from a software background, I thought I'd start out with a software question for you. And I would like to ask one of the paranyms to read out proposition number 6.
Everybody should learn to program a computer because it teaches you how to think. Steve Jobs.
Right, well, that's quite an extreme statement, right? But what I do know about Steve Jobs, he wasn't a proponent of open source, right? At least Apple is it, let's say that. And so you are, one of your hypotheses, at least your work is in the second part, to make your models open source. But then you also just said that they need to be maintained and they need to be implemented, introduced in the clinical setting, right? Do you think open source is a wise choice then?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and your question. That's a very tricky question when it comes to open source softwares, because we do know the benefits of having open source, so all the people could contribute to it. You can also add more models, you can curate it and optimize it. However, normally open source data, as I said, require systematic maintenance, which doesn't always happen. And also when it comes to these clinical decision support systems, there is always funding needed to do so. So there should be some financial incentives as well, including, so they would be up to date.
Right, and I would go even further than you, right? These softwares that you are showing, they influence decisions,
yeah,
which make them medical devices, which make them medical, under the medical device regulation. They need CE mark, they need the manufacturer, right? They need liability sorted out. Don't you think by making those models open source that you have just frustrated the introduction, because nobody will touch them now because they're open source?
I could foresee what the problem could be on that. So normally, especially if there are companies who would want to maintain and have these open sources, that would be an issue. However, I think also you can layer the openness of these open sources. So normally you also see that you have open sources that are for generic use, or like where developers could just like deploy their own improvements. However, you can also have private parts, so you can layer it. You can have a layer that could be open totally, and you can also have layers that would come with extra plugins, for instance, just like it happens in other software packages. But
could you also see more of a Linux-style approach, right? Where you have, you know, the main chip is open source and well maintained by a community, it's being updated and so forth. But there are also companies that give you a certified, you know, maintained service level agreement, all that good stuff. Do you think such a thing would work in medicine as well, or is that too complex? Like a Red Hat for these models or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think that would also work. Right now, we do have a lot of solutions in terms of also to save the data and all that in the parameters that are required. Mm-hmm. So I think if you do that in compliance to the required GDPR and all that, I think that shouldn't be an issue.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen those companies, but I agree with you. It would be good to have to try that out. Let me focus on another subject, which is more in the field of data science, and that's about your COVID model, or COVID models that you looked at. Because you state in that chapter, sorry, I noted it down, I think. Yeah, page 149. You stated that that you don't think these models are easily applicable to other cohorts, right? Like you mentioned something like Chinese versus European cohort, or maybe rural areas versus big hospitals, for instance, right?
Yeah.
However, if I look at the parameters of your model, I would say, well, why not? I mean, they're mostly things like white blood cell counts and imaging-based parameters, right? That determine whether or not a patient has pneumonitis based due to COVID. So why do you think it's so hard to, or why do you think it won't work anywhere in the world?
I do think normally what you see with these models that the more data you have, of course, you have better accuracy and better performance. However, the data is so diverse in terms of features as well. It could be in terms of dynamics of population. So normally, I think data could also be diverse if it's from Europe or if it's from US. So that would play, I think, a role into the model's performance. That's why we disclaim that this could also be one of the downsides of this.
Right, but if you suppose you would have that data, right, from these diverse settings, right, wouldn't your model or your AI simply be able to learn those differences, you think? Or do you need totally different models in different parts of the world?
That could be an option for sure, yes. If you train them in a proper way and use the latest methods or whatever, like now you have foundation models and all these models that could have better performance and could use more data and could train them. So in that case, that could be an approach, I would say.
Right, yeah, so we had some experience in that in the COVID pandemic when we got a model out of China. Right?
Yeah.
That's why it kind of triggered on the Chinese versus European. Out of Wuhan, which had obviously the first wave of patients, and they learned a model on 5,000 patients to determine COVID or not. And they gave it to us. And then we applied it to Maastricht patients, didn't work at all, right? So that kind of, I guess, meets your point. But why do you think that is?
That's a very good question. We also have noticed in our team that models perform differently. It's a little bit hard to think what could be the reason because I'm not the most medical person to say what would be the difference in the features included and all that. But I also acknowledge that this also happened to a lot of data sets that we had from China and not only, so.
Yeah. Well, we also got stuck. We don't know. But you think it may be the scanner, but it may also be that Chinese people look different on the CT than Western. We don't really know, to be honest. So let me ask a final question, which is about the core, the shared decision-making or the personal decision support systems. I was looking at your trial PDA, and as a trial person, if I want an RCT, I don't think I want to use your PDA because patients are so informed that they may decide not to join the trial, right? So what's good for me as the trial person may not be good for the patient, right? So how do we determine good in such a setting? Is that, can we get as many patients in the trial with sufficient information, or what else is the end result of such a trial PDA?
About the trial, so the reason we were focused on this clinical trial is also one of the evidences that you need to show when you develop PDAs is that ideally you perform randomized trials, which is the golden standards to show if these tools are effective or no.
Yeah.
And you do that. When it comes to the trial information, you also face patients that are not informed about the trial. And sometimes trials can be quite complicated with also a lot of side effects.
Sure.
And if you are knowledgeable about trials, I could imagine that you might not need to use that. However, that is not always the case with the patients due to a lot of like literacy issues that we do face and we do see. And there is also like digital divide and all this kind of elements that could play a role.
Right, so you think it's very good to have patients sufficiently informed and your tool might help?
I think so.
Right, okay, thank you. I'll give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you, Professor Dekker. The opposition will be continued by Professor Spreeuwenberg, Professor of Healthcare Innovation and Digital Transformation at Maastricht University.
Yeah. Dear candidates, I also would like to compliment you on your work, and I really appreciated the attention you gave to inclusive design and also the involvement of end users in the development of personalized decision support systems. And in chapter 2, you state that the clinical evaluation of those tools should be standardized.
Yes.
And you plead for the reintroduction of the RCT, which has a control group instead of the before-after designs that you usually encounter in the literature. Do you still agree with that? Do you plead for an RCT instead of a before-after design?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your nice words and your question. I do think that like randomized trials are still needed, and because they provide this evidence that is needed to show how effective these tools are. Okay. So I think I agree.
You still agree with that?
Yes.
But I work at the Care Innovation Lab of Maastricht Medical Center, and there we will try out different kinds of apps, new apps of new innovations. We try them out for a few weeks, and then we have to decide whether or not to scale it up. And in that environment, an RCT is not possible. So what kind of different design should you advise in such an environment where you need speed and RCT is not possible?
That's a good one. I would say normally when you develop these tools, you always we always follow like the golden standards of IPDAS, International Patient Decision Aids.
We don't follow it because we don't have time.
Then I would say maybe you could start with simple prototypes and you can test it in multiple rounds. So you don't have to so you can buy some time. And normally you can just split, or you have a multidisciplinary team, so you can test with different stakeholders. So in this case, with IT people, with clinicians, and also patients. You could also have patients, so you could test them in already these small prototypes, and then you can develop them, and you can also have them in extra scale or so develop them.
Okay, but because you're true, because that's something that's very important. After a few weeks, you also have to give evidence to decision makers, for example, a board, whether or not to implement it. What kind of outcomes should you focus on, do you think?
The outcome, I think, should be just give clear information, and also if you want it in a short time, try to keep it as short as possible. But should it relate to quadruple aim outcomes, for example? Also, yeah, for sure, yeah. And yeah, normally also patient's outcome is the main, one of the main components that shows. Yeah, and it's very difficult that without an RCT, you still have to provide evidence for something. And do you know about the mini health technology assessment that's often done in Sweden to standardize the evaluation of innovations in a few weeks? I'm not very familiar with it. Okay, but that's. You also plea for standardized application development. So not only the evaluation should be standardized, but we also should standardize the development of personalized decision aids. And what kind of phases do you think are important? So it's quite clear, actually, if you follow the International Patient Decision Aid standards, that you need to provide balanced information for treatment options. You also need to include patients, clinicians, since the design phase. You need to always bring what you need to extract from the national guidelines, so you should be in line and get the information from there. And also you need to provide evidence-based so the latest evidence that there is so about also treatment. An RCT? Or I don't want it. But okay, at page 95, you describe 4 phases that you used in the development of the PDE. Yeah. And you first you do a literature search. I think that's very important. Yeah. And then you make an initial prototype, and then you follow 3 rounds. So you start with the computer scientists, then the medical students and the physicians, and then in the last round you include the patients. Yes. But if, I'm really a design thinking person, where we first want to empathize and define and understand the problem, so should round 1
shouldn't that start with the patients instead of the computer scientists?
The first one starts with consultation with physicians.
Okay,
Yeah.
but shouldn't that start with the patients?
That could also be, yeah, it's also recommended. That's how we did it in this study, but for sure patients could have representatives
Because
there.
the patients you include in round 3
Yes.
at last.
The reason
Yeah.
why we did that is that we wanted to have curated PDA and consult it with the physicians, so they would get the information that they need to get.
And do you think if you would have started with the patients that in the end you would have a different look and feel of the PDA?
It is possible.
Okay, and what kind of elements do you think would have been different?
I do think normally when you design these tools, and if you include patients, the perspective of patients is always a bit different. So they always want you to have more multimedia, more videos, animations. And from the doctor's part, or like clinicians, we try to also make it so comprehensive, so we put everything that there is needed to be there. So I think there would be a little bit of differences in terms of their preferences on what to include in this PDA.
I think there is a chance that it will be totally different.
Yeah,
if you
I
start
think,
with the patients, and I would have done that, or maybe the physicians and the patients. But I think it's very important to include them in a very early stage. I still have time for a question. You also developed the I4 Cancer website.
Yes.
And states that it's not, and you say, oh, no, it's only a prototype and it's not meant for lay people.
Yes.
So, yeah, here you already avoid a little bit of discussion. And also at this I4 Cancer website, you didn't include patients, or?
No, we did not.
Okay.
So the purpose was quite far from including patients, since these are way too complicated for patients to understand. Decision support systems sometimes are difficult also for doctors to understand, and there would definitely be an impediment to develop this tool at that stage.
Okay. And what should be done to make it more inclusive, do you think?
I would say if we make these models a little bit more simplified, and also if they were to be used in a clinical practice, that the doctor would be using them in front of the patients, trying to make a more personalized treatment for them, the patient would start being more familiar with these tools, and they might also want to look at it themselves. One other way could be also incorporating them in EHR, electronic health record, so they would provide this data already, and they could look what the impact of using surgery, radiotherapy, or each treatment options would be based on their clinical
Because
parameters.
Also here I advise to include the patients and the physicians already at an early stage. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sprevelberg. Then the opposition will be continued by Professor Townend, who is present online. He's Professor of Health and Life Sciences Law at City University of London and also Associate Professor at Maastricht University.
Thank you very much, Director. Dear candidate, congratulations on your doctoral work, and also congratulations to your supervision team. It's very interesting and thought-provoking and practical, which is wonderful. And I think that it makes a contribution to this rapidly growing field. So first of all, well done. Now, with apologies, I'm a lawyer, but I'm working on the regulation of this field. Now, early in your thesis, you identify that privacy is important in this area. When you refer to privacy in your thesis, there seem to be areas of difficulties that it places limits on your work, and because of those privacy considerations. I'd like you to share with us some of the reflections that you have on your experience of privacy and data protection in your work and negotiating that regulatory regime. Now, perhaps to help you, a first area that struck me about this was that you refer to the evidence-based nature of the tools and the work. So I was first wondering, what was the range of different data you needed to access to develop the tools, the data that you needed to develop, and how you negotiated access to data that was outside that which you could gather directly from your cohort and participants, and whether that itself was a problem. So let's start with that sort of area. What were the data, and what were the sorts of problems you had?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and your very good question, and very challenging also for me to wrap it up. About evidence-based sources that we use. So normally when you develop patient decision aids, we always tend to use the latest updates of Cochrane review. So in that, when we include the treatments that are available, we always check on that. Next to that, we also always check Dutch national guidelines, so we can see what's available in the country about the treatments. If you try to stick to these standards or to these known and well-established sources, then you lower the risk of having privacy issues when it comes to these models especially. And well, the first part was for the patient decision aids, but for the models, then we just save the data in compliance to GDPR, and we try to anonymize data, to use multifactoring to protect the data and the access to it. And there are a lot of, we also used encrypted, encrypted the data, and we use all these protocols for passive and also in move data to be in compliance with the regulations.
Thank you. Well, that's sort of heartening to hear that you can do the work within the regulation. But I was wondering as well, because as Professor Decker was indicating, that you made some considerations about an international aspect to this. And in talking about how the regulations worked, you referred to the national regulations. I'm wondering if it becomes very complicated when you are trying to run this work on an international level, that you are confronted by conflicting sorts of regulation. Was that an issue for you, or could you imagine that you had to limit the way you were thinking because of the regulation? I'm not here to defend the regulation, by the way. I'm interested in how we can learn as regulators and academics from your experiences of trying to do this important work.
Yeah, we were definitely limited, and we try to focus all the data collection from the models and everything from the national guidelines, so we did not go broader than that. However, there are like other institutes that work with more international data and more international, in a more international way, so to say, in Ottawa University. But in our case, we just focused in the Netherlands, so that makes it a little bit easier if you just follow Dutch national guidelines. But that would be much more complicated, of course, if you would go internationally. So yeah.
And the app that you do, the tools that you've made, does that mean that they are pretty much geographically limited in when you actually roll them out and make them available in the market? Is this a tool for the Dutch market then because of that limitation, or can you imagine it working elsewhere?
They could be sort of limited, or they would be advised to be used in the Netherlands. However, they could also be updated or like expanded if they need to be used in other countries. So, and that's also part of personalization. It's also quite important to know where this would be applied and where this would be used.
I see. Thank you. Just a quick last question. Traditionally in health and medical research, we've relied very heavily on anonymization of data and the informed consent of the participants as a sort of gold standard. And I was wondering if your experience and in the development of these sorts of AI and data science tools was challenging that gold standard, that those sorts of anonymization and consent were now outdated and we would have to look for different safeguards. And I wondered if AI and data science had some safeguards to offer.
I would definitely say that they need to be updated with all these technological advances. So when we collected this informed patient informed consents, it was like, I think, 2.5 years ago. So I think we need to be up to date with the regulations. So that would definitely be slightly different, I could imagine.
Thank you very much. I hand the questions back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Townend. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Dasma, researcher at the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium, who's also present online.
Thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Congratulations for this nice work and presentation. Very clear and very nice. Thank you. My first question is about an issue that has emerged with AI, and in this field in particular, because there is a lot of, let's say, incentives to cheat financially. And there is issues with the fact that generative AI can create fake data, which can be used to let's say, wrong clinical trials results. So I'm aware of one of a case like this, where there are data in the clinical trials that are actually fake data, and the results of the clinical trial is not the correct one based on that. And here, my question is about PDAs, how to ensure that the patients do not use fraudulent fake copies of PDAs, in particular in the application or web-based PDAs, because they will, I suppose they will check the PDA at home or maybe in the hospital, but with their smartphone or something, but to be sure that they will use the correct one and they will have the correct information from them.
Esteemed opponent, thank you for your nice words and your question. So if I understand correctly, your question, you are trying to ask if the PDAs are pre-checked as information since they are being intended to be used before going to the consultation, right? And what about the fake data that is going on around with AI? Is that?
Yeah, fake data and also fake PDAs, entire fake PDAs that we could imagine.
We have noticed that there are also a lot of fake PDAs out there, but normally they come from financial incentives. So you do have, that's why when you develop PDAs, you normally need to address and also need to disclaim the conflicts of interest and who is the sponsor. So you always need to check who are the third parties that are sponsoring this tool to be developed. And they have found a lot of deviations from this also, for instance, from some PDAs in the US. You have PDAs about if you'd use the bottle for the babies or you'd breastfeed. And of course, they found out that the companies backing up the bottles were sponsoring this PDA. So we are really aware of these things happening. However, if you follow the standards of IPDAs and also national guidelines, that should be still possible to stay in the safe information.
Okay, thank you. And the content of a PDA is supposed to be exhaustive, right? I mean, the one you made for the test, you have this difference between radiotherapy and surgery, but you didn't include proton therapy or chemotherapy. So if it was to be used as a real PDA in real clinical practice, shouldn't it include also different methods that may be not available in some countries or in some part of your own country?
That's a good point, actually. So when we developed this PDA, normally we did have long discussions with pulmonologists, and normally the way to go when you have early stage non-small cell lung cancer is surgery, and there is very little room for decision making towards especially radiotherapy. So other treatments are even less possible to happen, at least at that time. So that's why we included only these two. However, I do think PDAs should give a comprehensive overview of all treatment options, and they should be included there, except for treatment options that don't have enough scientific evidence to back them up. So, but in our case, we focused on that since there was little room for decision making.
Okay, thank you. I had another question, but it was answered previously by, it was also asked by another candidate, another member of the jury, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, then you're sure you don't have other questions? Dr. Dandon? That's okay. Okay,
No,
then we
okay.
continue with Dr. de Jong. He's pulmonologist at the University Medical Center in Utrecht.
Thank you for your words. Dear candidate, thank you very much, and I also would like to congratulate you with this beautiful work, and also extend my congratulations, of course, to your team and all the people who helped you. I'd like to discuss with you, as of course I'm a lung cancer clinician, so I will focus first on chapter 3, the web-based patient decision aid. And before I'll ask you the questions, maybe you could tell the audience a little about the average lung cancer patient, because he or she is a little different from your Mr. Smith of the lay people, because that was a fit young man with a dog and on a bike. So can you please introduce the average lung cancer patient to us?
Esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and your question. Yes, I'll do that. So in case of John Smith, if we would have John Smith in 10 years, after 10 years, then he would go to the hospital, he wouldn't be feeling well, and he would be performing some screening. So, and then he would be diagnosed with lung cancer. That would depend which stage, in this case, early stage lung cancer. And once that happens, normally patients are overwhelmed with treatment options that could be applied in that case. And the reason why we developed these tools is that they could look into these treatment options at home together with their partners, with their family members, so they would let all the information sink and also be better prepared when they go to the doctor. Because it has been shown that the burden of the patients once they are diagnosed is quite high. However, these tools, if being used at home or pre-consultation, then this could help them understand what they might be going through in the upcoming weeks of treatment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's what you also see. The end-user perspective are very welcome to this. But if you try to enhance the use of it, that the patient will be better informed. On page 56, I read that the patient is more or less obliged to complete the whole PDA and do a knowledge test afterwards. And I was wondering whether that's not a little counterproductive, instead of, well, just provide information, but you also have to check that information. Can you elaborate on that?
So that's a very good point. The reason we did it this way, so we could also have had a paper version or like a video version, which is non-interactive option, but that would give also static information. So you as a doctor would not be able to understand what the patient understood with this PDA. So we did that intentionally to see, since the tool, it doesn't take more than 30 minutes to go through, we wanted to see if they understood the information. And since we wanted to test this one, if they wouldn't go through the whole app, then they wouldn't get the whole comprehensive overview of it, and then the judge, like the evaluation would be biased. So in that case, this was one of the reasons why we chose that. And generally speaking, PDAs are supposed to give the whole treatment options with all the long-term complications, side effects. Also, they also have Q&As there that they might have questions and answers, basically. So in that case, the main goal was to have this fully comprehensive information absorbed. And then with this test is also a way to see if the patient's literacy is there, because if, let's say, the patient would fill out this one wrongly, then the doctor would be, so the communication wouldn't be facilitated, basically. So that would be in a risk. And also the good thing is that they could also revisit this information. So one of the benefits of PDAs is that you can consult multiple times, and then you can learn from it. And you can redo again the quiz or the test in the end. And after that, you can also input what's important to you. So with these two inputs, the communication in the consultation would be facilitated.
Yeah, so that it's really more than just a web page for information, but you have to be interactive to see it. This example, you mean choosing between surgery or radiotherapy for early stage lung cancer? That's more or less an equipotent option of therapy. That said, for most patients, I as a doctor have a slight preference for surgery or for radiotherapy. So that makes it, and you have to discuss it with the patient, but that makes it even more complicated. But imagine that you have other types of treatment options. So no equipotent options, but for example, you have stage 4 lung cancer, and you are hesitating as a patient, should I get chemotherapy or should I just only receive palliative care? So no treatment options. Mm-hmm. How could you develop a PDA which will be a little more, not on the focus on two equipotent options, but more on a philosophical or way to give a patient more or less not a treatment option, but just to be sure, well, should I get treatment, right or no? Just. Yeah.
So you mean to give the whole picture? I understand.
Yes, and of course, I hope you say that we mentioned precision medicine in this in your answer.
I think normally when you have a more advanced stage, it always gets more complicated, in this case at least in lung cancer. And no treatment should be a treatment as well, should be an option, since we are lobbying choosing. Since it's also complicated for the doctors, as you said, I do think in this case the consultations should be focused more in the highly likely treatments that the patient could get, otherwise the consultation would be very prolonged. However, the PDA should definitely include all the treatment options that are still possible and available in the hospital where the patient is admitted to. I guess.
No, that's next level PDA, because of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do I have more time?
Yes.
Yeah. How could you a little philosophize about the applicability and the implementation of such a PDA? Mm-hmm. Because well, we've seen the PDA; it works. Patients are happy with it, but on a regular day-to-day basis, I don't see a few patients who use it. So how could we improve that, and which people or committees can help with that?
That's a very good question, definitely. So I think we should definitely start with the multidisciplinary team that could be involved in this, cease from the development stage of this PDA, including physicians, patients, nurses as well, even policy writers and psychologists or social workers, since this could also help patients go through these tools together. Since you mentioned that this could be more complicated, they would need more guidance and support throughout receiving this information. Also, it would start definitely from there. And then about the implementation, that's also one of the biggest challenges of patient decision aids at the moment, because there are a lot of countries who have implemented them, but here, especially for lung cancer, is still quite difficult, because in the Netherlands and also in Europe, you need to certify these patient decision aids, so they need to go through a certification process, and they need to be GDPR compliant. They also need to be in line with national guidelines, so that would be one of the consultations to get the data or like the information that is there. And also they need to follow rigorously, I think, international patient decision aid standards, so they would still provide balanced information for each treatment option, and they would be simplified. So in this case, one of the rules when you develop these tools is that they need to be easy to use, and also they need to have incorporated how to use option, which we always start with that as an introduction, so the patients could easily go through it. And in case they need some help, of course, maybe a case manager or a nurse could be one of the stakeholders that could help through this process.
In addition to my neighbor here, the patient advocacy, so the patient associations,
yes,
because I think they are very important to get it
yes.
to get it along, of course.
Yes,
On an early stage already, yeah.
Yes, for sure. Patients are one of the main stakeholders that they should be involved since in the design phase, and also should be involved in the testing and all the phases to see if this tool is actually absorbable from them, from their perspective. And the more patients you involve, the better the output is going to be.
Yes, of course. Do we have time for more questions?
If you have more questions, you can ask me.
Yeah, I was also a little wondering if ChatGPT will change this work.
That's the question that you get everywhere nowadays. I definitely.
Sorry.
No, it's appreciated. For sure, ChatGPT is being used massively right now. I definitely see the future of PDAs incorporating large language models. However, we need to be very careful when we choose what would be the best way to do that. So one of them that is the best way to go for is retrieval augmented generation as a method which would extract evidence-based information. So we make sure that the information that is being up to date so fastly is safe. And definitely nowadays you also see that you have all these chatbots that are helping and assisting the patients 24/7, so to say, and there are a lot of startups working on that. So I definitely see that could be incorporated in the patient decision aids in the near future even.
Yes, thank you. And if I'll still have more time, I can also give you a question about chapter 4, that's the trial PDAs.
Yes.
I was wondering, you make a PDA for a patient to give them information, should I enter the trial or not? How much of such a PDA is general and how much is the trial specific? What I'm trying to say is, how much should you do anew when you're starting a new study? So how much is on the specific trial for the PDA, and how much is about the regulatory reasons and side effects and all the other stuff that it's in the normally 30 pages of patient information that's normal with the clinical trial?
Yes. Normally when we develop this tool, we again follow these standards and guidelines. So we try to focus more in the information part of what would be the side effect of this treatment, if they would enroll into it or not, long-term complications, and also if they would undergo this treatment, what would be the side effect if they wouldn't choose to go to this treatment, what would be the impact as well. So it was mainly based on the trial information, not so much in the regulatory part. And that was part when that part was done separately, basically.
Yeah, because that would be easy if there is more kind of that the first pages are already written when you start a new trial.
So yeah, normally when we work, so we develop multiple PDAs actually. So it was for early stage lung cancer, we had for trial PDA, we had for prostate cancer, lung cancer. So we developed this framework that contained all these PDAs, and we did use some existing modules so that.
Thank you.
Iva Halilaj. Iva Halilaj. It's a difficult name to pronounce. The time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense, and I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this hall. Please, all rise.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Hit the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. To the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. What's on the line? I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Iva Halilaj. The degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Lambert is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law, and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Iva Halilaj, the degree of doctors and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificates signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university. Now give the word to your co-promoter, Anke.
Dear Dr. Halilaj, dear Iva, you made it. Congratulations on this big achievement. I also want to congratulate your friends and family, as they have been very important to you during this academic journey. Please bear with me. Familia de Mietje e Ives, Urime. Well, I could go on like this because, of course, my Albanian is very good, I hope. But to keep it understandable for most of those present here, I will continue in English. What a journey it has been. Iva, I still remember when we met for the first time, back in 2020, when I started working at Precision Medicine as the project manager for PREDICT. And your PhD project was part of the PREDICT network. And you, this beautiful, blonde, nice and energetic person, made me feel very welcome, and I still appreciate that so much. Your topic was a different type of that of most of the PM people. Nevertheless, I think with your enthusiasm, you were almost able to convince every hardcore computer scientist about the importance of patience and shared decision-making. Throughout your PhD journey, you faced significant obstacles, including a cyber attack that threatened to undo months of work, changes in your supervision, which made you have to adapt every time somebody else came on board, and of course the COVID pandemic, which was difficult for all of us. But imagine having to test something with patients if they're not even allowed to see their own doctor. However, in the face of all these hardships, you demonstrated extraordinary resilience, because I think that's something that should be applauded. Instead of retreating in the face of adversity, you embraced all these challenges and just went along. Iva, your perseverance is a testament to your character, your unyielding spirit, and your commitment to your work. And I think what mainly sets you apart and how people know you is your generosity and willingness to support those around you. And even when your own research demanded your full attention, you were always willing to share your knowledge and your skills in helping out others. Based on your spontaneity and genuine interest in people, you were able to build a close network of people and friends in Maastricht. And for quite some people, you have been a sounding board and have provided support during intense periods and sad moments. All of those qualities you can use in your current job as a Scrum Master at ASML. You know how to motivate people, and you are able to optimize processes. Well, who can say that they can do that? And I am sure your colleagues are very happy with you. Iva, today we celebrate not only the successful completion of your PhD project, but also the exceptional individual that you are. You have shown us all what it means to persevere and to succeed against the odds. Your work is a reflection of the passion and persistence that drive you as a person. And I'm confident that all these qualities will bring you many more achievements, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Dear Dr. Halilaj, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I would like to congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. I also congratulate your family, friends, and colleagues present here or maybe online following this, the live stream of this ceremony. I'd like to congratulate your supervising team, Professor Lambin, Dr. Wind, and Dr. Ankulekar, with this nice PhD defense. And I would like to thank the members of the degree committee here present and those present online for their contribution to this defense. Maastricht University really appreciates your efforts in this. I can tell you from the deliberations of the committee we just had that the committee was really impressed by the way you were able to answer all the questions on very different, very diverse topics. I think that shows that you really mastered the topic, and that will be a good basis for your further career in this area. So I wish you a lot of success in your further career. And with this, we come to an end of this PhD defense, and I close this ceremony. Reception. We will make some pictures here and on the staircase, and then we will join you.